Welcome back, everyone. I wanted to take a look at one last major artist that's coming out of northern Italy and influences both Florence art and the art of Rome. I want to take a look at Raphael as one of the leading artists of the High Renaissance. He takes all of the ideas of the previous artists that come before him, Fra Angelico, Botticelli, Leonardo, Michelangelo, and he really starts to hone a very mature style, right? He's a son of an artist and comes from a small area in eastern Italy, and he was trained by a Renaissance artist known as Perugino, and he heard that Leonardo had returned to Florence in 1505, and so he left to study under Leonardo to understand the master himself. He eventually goes to Rome and is employed by Pope Julius II and becomes the major Pope painter. But this is what Vasari says about Raphael. Again, Vasari is an artist, but also an art historian who's taken a look at all these major artists that are coming out of Italy, and he writes a short kind of quasi-biographies about each one. It says, "How generous and kind heaven sometimes proves to be when it brings together in a single person the boundless riches of its treasures and all of those graces and rare gifts that over a period of time are usually divided among many individuals can clearly be seen in no less excellent than gracious Raphael Sanzio of Urbino. Nature created him as a gift to the world." Right? And so this idea that there's this gift that is given to humanity to elevate our thoughts. Mainly what we see with Raphael, particularly in his early period, is he represents Madonna and baby Jesus. He's really focuses on this as a narrative. As we've talked about with Savonarola, the extreme monk, extremist monk that comes from Florence, and he starts clamping down on ideas and pagan thoughts, focusing on secularism and humanistic thought. He wants to purge Florence of all of these, what he considers to be worldly things. Raphael came to town with his beautiful simplicity and calming the turbulent mood. Right? So perhaps he plays a small role in restoring some order and squelching some of the fears that arose during the Renaissance. This is his emerging style. He focuses mainly on soft lighting and themes of Madonna and child. The work on the left was done for another wealthy family in Florence known as the Pitti family. So there's the Medici family and the Pitti family. Both of them are competing for power. Pitti is P-I-T-T-I. He maintains the earlier iconography of the halo on the right. If we take a look at the darker image on the right, but he softens but he softens it with the foreground and the juxtaposition with the darkened background. There's a gentle reference to their divinity. Mary looks downward to demonstrate her contemplative life. Jesus, however, engages with the viewer. Perhaps he is asking us to follow him. He is the way, he is the truth and light. However, he also perhaps is wondering why the viewer is intruding on mommy and me time. Look how he just kind of gently touches Mary's chest and just kind of in this kind of interesting, intimate kind of connection between them, right? This kind of subtle connection between a mother and a child. Where much of the Renaissance was celebrating love beyond divine love, the secular love that we see with Botticelli and the Birth of Venus, or even Leonardo and the Mona Lisa, Raphael is focusing on efforts of the divinity, focusing more on religious love. His colors are vibrant and have an almost internal radiance, particularly in the left-hand image. Madonna and child almost glow amid the stark backdrop of the background. They are a lightness amid the darkness of life, right? This kind of idea. We see a slightly different image on the right-hand side with Madonna and Jesus in the meadow. John and Jesus are playing, but they're not playing with regular children's toys. They're playing with a cross, and this overshadows everything they do. Everything at a young age, they're being taught or trained to fulfill their larger destinies. Raphael liked, like a lot of artists, does not provide an outside the church kind of mindset here, right? This kind of everything is centered within the context or the confines of the Catholic Church. He focuses everything on building up Catholicism. Mary looks onto this heavenly scene of these two young children playing below, realizing what has to happen, kind of this kind of soft, quiet contemplation. Yet she must play her part to teach and instruct these two to live up to their potential. It is her holy calling, but then again, this is also beyond her and part of all of humanity. We see more of the background in Madonna of the Meadow, but instead of placing her on a throne or in a church, it is in nature. Nature is God's creation. It is his holy temple, so it is wherever he is, right? And so this holy scene here with Mary and baby Jesus and John the Baptist on the left, that is a holy scene because it is a sacred setting because it is in nature with them, right? And then you get kind of the subtle introduction of the exterior world just above Mary's right shoulder to our left in the far background that alludes to the life beyond them, a life that they are perhaps escaping or a life that they're not really part of. Something to think about is how Raphael may have helped to calm the fears of extremism in Florence after the hysteria brought by Savonarola. Was this kind of a necessary step to calm down the fears and the burning of art and the artists kind of having this anxiety about this movement towards secularism? I want you to think about how his works might show a return to moderation. What do they emphasize? Or on the other side, is this kind of just a reaction to extremism? Is he just coming to town and capitalizing on this kind of new movement to kind of center themselves within Catholicism? Over on the right, Madonna with the gold finch, we see a similar motif with the three of the individuals, Mary, baby Jesus to our right, and then on the left is John the Baptist with his camel hair. But again, they are away from the world. There is no outside the church here. So there is no secularism. There is no humanism. There is maybe some Platonic thought or Neoplatonic thought, but it's all centered around the ideas of Christianity. Mary holds in her left hand the scriptures, teaching and instructing them, telling them how to, behave and what their overall destinies are. John the Baptist has found a bird and he is showing it to Jesus, who kind of casually, passively just kind of says, yeah, I made that, right? So he just kind of looks over and kind of nonchalantly, very gently though. But it's almost as though these two have this kind of wisdom or intellect, maturity beyond their years, right? But the idea here within nature, Jesus commands all things denote there is a Christ. And they obey his will. Jesus shows his ability here, shown by Raphael, even at a young age. Again, he places him within the confines of nature rather than within a church building or some other holy building. Raphael contrasts the dark broodiness of Michelangelo, where Michelangelo was withdrawn. Raphael was connected and gregarious, very kind of outgoing. Raphael's style shows the merging of Leonardo's and Michelangelo's style. He kind of blends them together to show this kind of high Renaissance style. He takes both of them and harmoniously blends them to make a new aesthetic. His works are light and airy. They are fun and timeless. They generally represent the eternal world of beauty that is untouched, unsullied, or undefiled by the physical world. His characters step away from the cares, the time, the concerns, the idea of work, the ideas of the pressures of humanity, all of the social concerns, social media, the internet, steps away from all of those concerns, the corruptions of mortality. And here he represents the ideal. Yet there's that sense of naturalism to them, where the characters look realistic, but they are at ease at a world that is void of pain and conflict. We don't see pain, we don't see conflict generally within Raphael. They kind of have this, they're stepping away to give us again, peering into this eternal, into this divine world where we don't really have the cares of the world. And so again, it's kind of elevating our thoughts to think about the divine, to kind of transcend the general ideas that surround us, right? There is no conflict here. This was started when when he was in Florence. He was unable to finish this one, and Ghirlandaio finished it. Notice how Jesus just has his hand out on his mom's knee, just kind of casually, passively, right? Again, he keeps the halo to kind of give that sense of divinity, but yet it's in a natural setting. It's very subtle that you wouldn't even really notice it. It shows no signs. This image shows no signs of what the child's life is to become. He is happy where he is at the moment. This is the idea of living in the moment apart from the world. There is no darkness, only a thin cross that John the Baptist carries with his camel hair to the left foreshadows the future of what will be. Mary, unlike in other works, there is no church or throne. This again is only nature. Nature becomes her holy temple. And notice the subtle halo in the sky. Almost you don't even see it unless there's a close-up or a detail. But again, she's teaching. She has the scriptures in her hand. She's teaching. She's instructing to demonstrate that she's modeling for them their larger behavior. John the Baptist kneels before Jesus to show his reverence, and even at a young age, he acknowledges the importance of his cousin. The buildings in the background, in the far right-hand background corner, represent the world within the context of the 16th century. So this is a 16th century timeline. So placing them, even though this was taking place in ancient times, he places them within a contemporary context to make the image feel contemporary to the viewers. The world is there, right? It's almost within their grasp. This is why Jesus is necessary. It reminds people the need for salvation. It shows how to live in a world apart from mortality. But he came to redeem it because of the sins of humanity, right? But I want us to think about Raphael, and maybe this is in some ways a positive way to kind of think about life apart from the world, but in some ways it's also spiritual escapism, right? It's not really dealing with conflicts. It's not really dealing with the pains and afflictions of the world. It's not really going to be dealing with the wars that are going to be raging throughout much of Europe over the next several centuries. It's kind of just suggesting that life is apart from conflict, and these have no part within it. And so in some ways it's instructing us how to elevate our thoughts, not to be of the, or in the world but not of the world. But in some ways it's so void of any type of external conflict that it seems a little maybe disconnected to some. Thinking about the comparison between Leonardo and his representation of this scene and Raphael, we can see a clear influence. Both of them represent the same subject matter, the same ideas with Mary, Jesus, and John the Baptist. Both show how figures are come away from humanity. Raphael clearly was aware of Leonardo's style. Even though he was living in France at the time, he was aware of the style and themes. However, there are subtle differences. Leonardo's is darker, at least here. It is entirely removed from the world. Raphael removes the angel to make it look more realistic and places the city in the background to remind people of the purpose of Christianity. But again, there's similarities between them in terms of the high Renaissance style. Some things to think about. We've studied a couple of works that represent Mary and Jesus. I want you to think about comparing Leonardo's Virgin of the Rocks with Raphael's La Belle Janeire. Consider the setting, the composition, the iconography, and how do we see Leonardo's influence? What does Raphael add? And how do they represent the values of the high Renaissance, and in what ways are they different? Eventually, like Michelangelo, Raphael was summoned to Rome at the request of Pope Julius II. He knew both of the high Renaissance. Raphael knew both the high Renaissance artists, Michelangelo and Leonardo and wanted to find balance between their design. And so here we see kind of that merging style further. Leonardo was interested in mathematical precision of the canvas and the scientific discoveries of the body. Michelangelo was interested in the purity of line and form. At one time, Raphael was more famous than Michelangelo in Rome, which is kind of hard for us to believe. He was considered the highest painter and had up to 40 artists in his studio. We generally think of Michelangelo as being the preeminent painter in the Renaissance, but at one time, Raphael's purity of forms and his ideal representation of harmony and beauty were highly sought out. Here we see the School of Athens, which is paying homage to the importance of Greco-Roman ideas within the Renaissance. Here what Raphael does, he brings all of the greatest thinkers into one stage. But what's important about this work is that this is in the Vatican. That these ideas, which 100 years ago would never have made it inside the Vatican, they now are being celebrated as part of this emerging style. Part of the importance of Christianity is seeing thoughts that are true no matter where they come from. You don't necessarily have to originate with the founding fathers of Saint Augustine or Saint Jerome. You can have ideas that broaden the scope of the world. And so here we see the importance of Greek ideas within the context of modern thought and how important they are. We focus, the focus here is on the balance and harmony. We have 15 figures on one side, on the left-hand side, and 15 figures on the right-hand side, if you count them up, at least in the vertical line. And the vertical and the horizontal lines give a sense of serenity, right? And we can see the use of Brunelleschi's linear perspective that pushes the canvas back. We can also see placing this within an ancient context or ancient architecture, demonstrating, again, that importance of the previous century of going back to these ideas. But again, just thinking about them, thinking about Raphael in context of Leonardo, we can see a strong influence of the Last Supper, where Leonardo places the Last Supper at a table and separates us, the viewer, from the scene, right, this divine scene of the Last Supper. We see that similar idea with Raphael's School of Athens, lining them all up as though they are on a stage. And then we, the viewers, are able to come and see this kind of scene, see the ideas, see the importance within them. Now, what Raphael also does, he places contemporary people, contemporary artists within them to demonstrate that these ideas, these ancient ideas, are being brought, carried forth by these contemporary artists. And so we see a blending of ancient ideas with contemporary people, right? So just to kind of go through the iconography, in the very far background, there is a sculpture of Apollo, who's the god of light and the god of art. And so part of that idea of truth, looking for light, looking for truth, but also using light and knowledge to create art that's going to inspire people. On the right-hand side, we see another statue, painting of a statue of Athena. So again, what we have is this goddess of wisdom who is also being celebrated, that we're celebrating wisdom in all things. And again, this is in the papal quarters in the Vatican, right? So this is something that previously, pagan ideas would be a little bit out of place. Think about putting something like this in Salt Lake or something where you're celebrating pagan ideas. It might feel a little bit out of place, but the idea is that the importance of humanism suggests that we can find truth in all things. And so now we see the transformation with the High Renaissance, that all ideas are being valued, even in this, to the Catholics, a very holy place. And then just kind of going through the iconography, on the right hand or the left hand side, we see Plato. On the right hand side, he's talking with Aristotle. Then we see Epicurus, which focuses on theory and knowledge, looking for truth. And then just below, we have Pythagoras, who is a mathematician. Again, mathematics is the language of God, and so that's important. And then he also places at the very center, and the closest person to us, Michelangelo. Right? This is a portrait of Michelangelo, and he's kind of withdrawn, which was true to his nature, but kind of lost in thought. Not just an artist that is a craftsman, but someone that's constantly thinking, how do we elevate life? How do we elevate humanity's thoughts? And what is the meaning of life, right? So lost in thought, lost in these great thoughts. And then over a little bit more to the right, we have Diogenes, who is focuses more on denying worldly things. So he lived a life of poverty because he believed that wealth leads to corruption. And so we see that idea of living a moral life. And then on the far right, we see Euclid, which was, he's painted in the face of Bramante, which was a contemporary artist to Raphael. And so he kind of blends Euclid, which is a Greek mathematician, to this contemporary artist to Raphael, Bramante. And then you have just a little bit above Diogenes, you have Raphael places himself within there. And then Pericles was a Greek leader. And again, as I said, Aristotle, and then the goddess of wisdom just kind of finished that. But again, the main idea that we see at the very center, you have Plato and Aristotle conversing. And Aristotle is pointing, holding his book, he's pointing to the ground, suggesting if you want truth and knowledge, you have to seek it in natural reasoning. You have to seek it through the senses, the five senses. That's how we come to understand truth, is studying the sciences. And Plato says, no, to understand truth, we have to look to the divine, right? So again, we see that balance between the physical realm and the eternal realm being blended together with the School of Athens. This one is just me taking a picture of it at the in the Vatican, and you can see how elongated it is. How he has to do this in order to capture the sense of space, because when you step back, it all kind of snaps into perfect proportions. But as you get closer to it, they start to elongate, right? So the idea is trying to focus on how to create something as realistic as possible. This is just a close-up of a portrait of a self-portrait of Raphael as he puts himself in this school, this great school of thinkers and artists that are all thinking about what is the meaning of life, these great thoughts, right? Again, thinking about this is not about profaning the sacred, it's about sanctifying the profane. So the idea here is that there is the sacred, that's kind of the sacred space that's apart from the world, and the profane. Generally, when we think of profanity, we think about swearing. But in the context of here, profane means just things that are not sacred, right? Things are in the outside world. And so some people might have seen this earlier as bringing the profane, something outside the church, into the church, and then making the sacred become less sacred. But what we see here is this is more about sanctifying the outside world, that these ideas have value, these ideas have merit, so why don't we just celebrate them because they're important? Let's celebrate their importance. And this is just me in the room, right, taking a video. Just give me a sense of scale and context on the wall here. And as you go to the Sistine Chapel, it's about a mile and a half walk as you kind of wind through the Vatican, which is the smallest city in the world, but the entire thing is a museum. And so on the way to the Sistine Chapel, which is where everyone is going to see, you stop, and this is one of the many rooms that you see, right? And as you start to going through the Vatican, you'll notice that from the floor to the ceiling, it's just everything is art. They're filled with ancient sculptures. They're filled with tapestries. They're filled with frescoes. And this is just one of the many rooms. And so demonstrating the importance of art and how the Catholic Church saw the importance of these artists and bringing them within, kind of entering them within the fold and saying, you have value, you have importance. We're going to use you to be able to help spread the message. And the question here is, what is the message? There is no baby Jesus. There is no ancient prophets. But the focus here is on reason, on thought, that we can celebrate ideas in and of themselves because ideas are significant. Ideas are important. It doesn't necessarily matter where they come from. There's truth in all things. So let's look for truth in all things. And so that's what we see happening within the Catholic Church during the Renaissance.